Good afternoon or morning, evening, wherever you are at the moment. I'm Kishore Siva and delighted to welcome you to the latest installment of the Valenta BPO Insider Series. And we're looking forward to sharing information about a really important topic around process consulting and the importance it can have to a client. But before I do that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the series and why we started it, and then introduce our guest speakers today. So when we think about the work that we do at Valenta, we really our mission has been to help companies of all sizes be more efficient in the way that they operate. And we do that through three core services: process consulting, digital transformation and automation, and outsourcing. But foundationally, a company needs to have robust processes in place. I've actually worked in financial services for 25 years, and through my banking career, worked with a lot of companies across multiple industries. And I've seen it over and over again, and companies of the largest companies make this mistake, and sometimes the smallest companies do too. And that's investing a lot of money in technology and in people without first having robust underlying processes in place. Either processes are inconsistent or poorly designed, or because a company might be the amalgamation of two or three companies that have been previously acquired, that are run in siloed type of environments, and the processes are not very consistent. And then what that leads to is that investment in technology and in adding more and more people becomes wasted cost. And so that's why we at Valenta feel it is so critical to have very, very strong processes in place. And we're going to talk in a moment about an example of a client who really benefited from that. We also want to welcome everyone to the Insider Series. This is a series that we've started this year, and we will be holding on a regular basis. And we hope you'll be joining us for future Insider Series, because this will be an opportunity to talk a lot about the types of services that our clients are telling us that they need, whether it's process consulting or digital transformation, automation, AI, robotic process automation, or outsourcing. And so today we're really delighted to be talking about process consulting. Before I turn it over to our guest speakers, I wanted to encourage everyone, as Aishwarya and Gautam are taking us through the presentation, to please ask any questions that you have in the chat. And then at the end of their presentation, we'll happily ask them the questions that each of you have as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest speakers. So we have Aishwarya Ravindran and Gautam Samtani, who are both come to us with a great deal of expertise in the process consulting space. And both Aishwarya and Gautam have come to us from some of the largest consulting firms in the world, where they've worked with a variety of clients across multiple verticals and multiple industries. And so with that in mind, we thought they would be especially appropriate to provide the services that they had been providing at the largest companies to the customers that we have at Valenta. And we've been very pleased with the feedback we've gotten from all of the clients that they've engaged with. So one in particular was a client in the cyberspace, and that's a really timely case study given everything that's going on in the world. And we wanted to ask Aishwarya and Gautam to tell us a little bit more about that. So Aishwarya, Gautam, I know you'll be sharing your screen, and we will turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Kishore. Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to connect with all of you today. One of our main intention with this series is to actually really understand how good and how important it is to kind of look at your operating framework and optimize it so that it's working efficiently, and also to kind of reiterate how the entire technology technology and the people aspect has to optimally blend with your process framework for you to kind of get the results that you desire. So whether you are operating in any domain, any sector, any industry, what's crucial is that you kind of bring in all these operating elements together and then, put them across in a combination that really suits you. And to start with, amongst the the three-pronged fork, if we were to start with the main element, we'd always begin with process. We need that operating framework in place so that we can kind of, move ahead and then bring in the adequate technology and the required skill set for it to kind of fit in perfectly as a good puzzle. So one of our good experiences over the last year was working with this cybersecurity firm, and we were asked to actually come in for a process optimization as well as a digital transformation exercise. Now, the core of this absolutely lied in the fact that we had to first go ahead and look at the way operations were run, right from their core operations down to their support functions, see how these could be aligned, and then kind of fit in the technology piece right at the right at the end of it. So while it was focusing on utilizing their effective system, making sure that they were implementing all the functional aspects of the system, the core and the base of it still lied in the fact that we still needed to strengthen all the processes in order to bring in that value that technology usually brings, right? So the cybersecurity firm was based out of the United States. They were working in different domains in IT and infrastructure, cloud adoption and consumption, healthcare, and program management. And they offered a series of products as well as services to their clients. So in terms of their portfolio, they pretty much had a product service mix, which kind of becomes a little more complex when it comes to design and operational excellence at the back end. So before I dwell into what exactly we did for them, I'd like to just highlight what the main functional areas were. And the reason is, an understanding into this will kind of give you an idea in terms of how all these elements need to come together in order to get visibility into the data that is crucial for decision making, any kind of MIS, and also to ensure efficiency along the entire supply chain, whether it is your product or your service, right? So this was their broad functional structure. They had a sales team which had a combination of field sales and inside sales personnel. So they handled, lead identification, identifying potential clients, various inquiry bits and information gathering, and finally, based on what the client requirement was, they would actually go in and provide a relevant quote. Now, the quoting could be for a combination of products or services as the need may be. Right. And then finally, finalizing the terms and conditions of the contract and thereby ending the sales cycle. Right. From the sales, we move on to the project pieces where we are here ideally referring to the service contracts. Right. So the client wanted to actually execute through different statements of work, different task orders for its clientele. And for that, they sometimes had in-house personnel. They also had subcontractors that they utilized, and for each of these tasks. So project monitoring, change management, record management was all a very key component. One of the more interesting features of this organization and the way it functions was also the fact that they actually had commissions for each of their sales people based whether it was services or products. So while commissions becomes is a very common thing that you see, what was interesting was the way in which it was distributed amongst the sales personnel, and to that extent it was not exactly the most straightforward calculation. So when we had to actually look at it, we realized that while they had come up with a very innovative framework to kind of calculate commissions, the manner in which they did this was largely manual, thereby burdening them with that much more effort and energy that they needed to kind of put in for this. So you wanted to kind of reduce that, yet retain the design of it, but then make life easier. And that's where technology, of course, steps in. From services, you also have the products bit. The products sales cycle was the typical one where you once the quote is finalized, you actually move into the order tracking phase. You handle any queries that come along the way, either from the distributor or from the client. So you're essentially acting like the middleman there. So any kind of client interaction or information exchange between both the parties needs to be effectively managed and handled, and of course bearing in mind that the order has a particular delivery and it is due then. And finally, again, the commissions bit coming in here as well. And then you had their support functions that kind of tied in. They had an extensive distributor network that were part of them for either their service contracts as well as their products. So it was kind of very, very important that right from the empanelment to the management to the communication as well as the payout, all of that is effectively managed. They had, of course, their SLAs that needed to be defined and effectively managed even in terms of vendor-related data in their database. Right? We all know finance is as crucial and completes the entire cycle of operations. So whether you're invoicing your clients, you're managing your expenses, you're following up on collections, or you're ensuring that payroll and book close activities are done on a periodic basis in the most accurate manner, you want to ensure that the system really helps you. You want to ensure that there are adequate maker-checker controls across the entire value chain, and all turnaround times, and whether it comes to statutory obligations or in terms of what you have defined in your service level agreements with the vendor, are all adhered to. And finally, you will have the information security and access bit, which was crucial to them. Of course, because they were operating in this domain, this obviously takes precedence over everything as well. So now that we have an idea, we'll now go on to what exactly were the challenges that were faced by the client. And we've kind of broken this down functionally and at a macro level, because any digital transformation exercise at the very bare minimum is going to change the way things are being actioned upon. So there is a very evident change in the functional aspect, and that automatically has a bearing at the macro level. Right. So from the functional point of view, there was an absence of a comprehensive order management system. So your order to cash and your purchase to pay, the visibility was a little limited because it was obviously a little manual. So you saw everything in chunks and smaller aspects, right? So there was a need to gain a larger visibility. Right. Likewise, how for products you're tracking orders, for service contracts, the project management system also needed to come in place. While they were very aware of their statement of work in terms of which resources are doing what kind of work, what is the kind of labor category that was being involved in a particular project, it still would help for them to kind of move to a systemic platform whereby all of this is tracked, and a lot of it is most importantly automated to make their life more efficient and also ensure that as much time that is possible is as less time as possible is utilized. Likewise, like I mentioned earlier, there was a need to kind of rework and rebuild the commission calculation design into the system so that any kind of manual effort is reduced, any kind of room for error is also reduced, and you have perfect visibility into what are the payouts that are due to your employees at the end of every month. And obviously, when you have very limited aspects of your functioning inside the system, despite having a system. So it's not that they had to start from the bottom of the pyramid. They already had a system. It was just the idea that this needed to be utilized to the maximum possible extent. And I think where we stepped in was the fact that despite most of them knowing very well that these were the challenges they faced, you just kind of needed someone to kind of look at it from a third eye perspective at a macro level and tell you that, okay, you need to make these changes so that at the end of the day, this is how the organization is impacted at a macro level. And also then kind of bring in the process and the people element to kind of tie it in together. So all of these challenges led to, underutilization of the system at hand. So obviously there's more effort, there's more energy being spent. There's also the absence of timely entry of financial information. And that is something at any cost you want to kind of put a stop to. You want to ensure that your financial reporting at a very bare minimum is real time and is giving you the information that you need to make better decisions for your business. Any kind of even business performance results will definitely have an impact based on this. Also, when you have a system in place and you are entering part-time information into it, there is an element of data hygiene that kind of tends to get lost along the way. And you want to kind of ensure that you bring in all elements of data within the system and then ensure a guideline of operation for each of these elements so that data hygiene is maintained and there is no duplication or any inaccuracy that might hamper your reporting. And finally, obviously, all of this would lead to timely visibility into data, and you want to kind of merge that gap. And in specific, there was also an absence of a fixed assets tracking, which again bears on your financial reporting. So while functionally we identified these as the key challenges, these were the corresponding impact at a macro level. And what we decided to do as a result of these two challenges that we identified was to kind of have a phase-wise approach by which we would tackle each of these functional aspects and kind of introducing the system in a different manner, redesigning the process to a large extent, and introducing a little more control or realigning the roles and responsibilities of people will thereby kind of, reduce these gaps, plug in the areas that are missing, and then help you work more efficiently. Yes. So this was our key solution offering. And while that comes about into play completely, I'm just going to broadly outline how is it that we generally, we essentially have a process walkthrough process, and we interview all the stakeholders who are involved in the business, internal or external, as the case might be, also depending on the nature of the problem. So if it requires for us to speak to your external stakeholders, then there is definitely an interaction there as well. Once we do a process walkthrough where we are assessing the process aspect of things, we are assessing roles and responsibility allocation, we are looking at reporting, we are looking at any kind of control gaps that exist, any kind of risk measures that have not been taken into consideration. All of that kind of comes in and helps us understand how we need to design the system and then how we need to utilize it. If you have an existing system in place, like the client here had, then it becomes of how can we use the system better? Where are the ways in which we can kind of modify or tweak the system so that it gives us better performance results? Based on which we actually come up with a revised blueprint, and then we have the development and implementation roadmap with our entire technical team. So to start with, we actually configured an entire orders tracking system within their CRM module. And this was actually automated to the maximum possible extent and completely designed by us from scratch. This was not an available module within the system. It is something that we created along with our development team. And that would actually track your entire sales cycle, right from when you are quoting the product till such time that the shipment has reached the customer. And obviously, because your CRM is linked to your finance, you automatically want that linkage to give you visibility on how kind of distributors are paid out in relation to system, kind of gave them visibility from end to end in terms of from the time the order is placed to the time the order is shipped and the related distributor is paid out. There is visibility, at certain points that these are the places where the glitches were there. These are the issues that we needed to talk to. This also helps in facilitating better and more timely information exchange. And to that extent, kind of covers the entire product piece for them. Moving from the products, we then go on to the projects and the service contracts, which were far more structured because they worked with year-long or large timeline driven projects. So you just had to ensure that project resources were allocated, their labor categories were defined, and the number of hours that they were spending on the projects were adequately tracked. And that's what the system the projects module allows for you to do. So designing that and ensuring that projects are adequately tracked, again, right from the time the project is finalized, the terms and conditions are agreed upon, right up to when the monthly invoicing or the monthly payouts to subcontractors, if at all involved, take place. So in that sense, we covered that particular life cycle from end to end as well. Having the baseline configured with the products and the services tracking in place, we then go on to an advanced feature, which is basically saying that if we were to calculate commissions, and based on the design that these people have, we again inbuilt, a commissions module, which would actually go forth and calculate all of these fees, and most importantly, feed into their financial reporting system on a monthly basis so that their forecasts are accurate. With that, the automatic connection then comes forth to MIS. MIS, you want your MIS framework to be accurate. You want it reaching and permeating to all levels of management, and you want it at a particular frequency and in different formats to meet, the requirements of different people. And we thankfully had a system that would actually enable a lot of the reporting that they required. There was just a lot of redesigning that needed to be done, given the fact that we had to reach out to different people across the layers of management. Right. And finally, because the system has been configured in a very different and redesigned in a different way, controls have been instituted, risks have been minimized. You want to finally given the peripheral support. And that's where we kind of come in with a little bit of manual work, where some related templates or formats for key workflows are defined, or we give you some kind of base thresholds for key value transactions and things like that. So that's more at a guideline level, or more like checklists that would kind of support you in your day-to-day work. And finally, we obviously, have a gradual transition whereby we introduce this revised design to all the people. So while you see that sometimes a lot of technology implementations fail because the manner in which it is positioned to the employees or the workforce is generally, very sudden. There is very limited rationale offered to them in terms of why a certain activity is being done. But I think because of our continuous involvement during the project, whereby we've interacted with process participants right from the junior level right up to the senior management, and kind of gotten all their inputs and feedback and things like that, it offered a very seamless transition. But what also really added value here was the fact that we had supporting documentation that was provided to them, which is again a very unique way in which our service offering functions. And also we conducted workshops where we would orient them into the when, what, why, how of each of these changes that have taken place, and the corresponding benefit that you would get from actually conducting this entire exercise. So that was mainly the solution offering from end to end. And this resulted in the following benefits to the client.
Right. So just to add to the point Kishore had made initially during this meet, that we cannot emphasize enough on how important it is to map all your processes and build SOPs. While a lot of clients do feel that they have it in place, but it always helps that when you initiate and kick off any process, you map their processes as is, whereby you can actually understand where they stand in terms of their workflows and their operations. And then you can talk about the technology element. So some of the benefits that we would like to highlight that our client was served from this engagement was we standardized the entire process flow. This kind of made it easier for them to execute their operations and get the maximum benefit from the system, their people, and the system flow. We also set a guideline for all the employees to carry out the ongoing activities. What kind of general controls came into place to ensure that there's no entries that are not legitimate that are entered into the system, and there's data hygiene maintained at all time. We try to automate almost every module whereby the manual intervention would be very minimum and there wouldn't be redundancy across functions. And Kishore also did mention, what we try to offer our client is an entire ecosystem whereby we bring in the people, the process, and the technology at an optimal spot, whereby the client can gain maximum benefits from. Also, when we were doing all these works, we created training manuals whereby there were workflows, there were screenshots. So there was a good legacy document for the client in case they had an employee that was exiting the firm, the next employee could actually just step in and kind of continue from the same step. So that was something which I think was a big benefit for them. Also, there was key identification of key stakeholders, segregation of duties. So just for something, just a small example would be that they had their items and products in books, whereby they kept adding a new item or a product in the system when they didn't have to, because they didn't have a general control on it. And that ended up leading into almost 16,000 products. So the cleanup of that was quite a task. So this was a control where there's only one person who would approve anything that goes into the system. Then we helped them institute an entire robust monitoring system whereby reports and the entire MIS framework was created that would give you access controls. You would know which personnel gets what kind of reports, what kind of access they have. Like Ash mentioned, the commission model was something which was really complicated to design, but we also had to ensure the employees didn't have access to the commissions of other employees. So those kind of controls really came in, it took a lot of time to build, but that was something that we were successfully able to execute. Also, we've paved the way for future transformation of the company, and the company we are talking about is in the process of acquiring another company. So they want to bring them onto the same platform. So keeping that in mind, we did, consider how we could, build them onto the same platform. At the end of this project, we got some additional work from this client. So we've just kicked off another phase. This is largely to get the entire books in place, which would be the financial and accounting perspective. We're building the chart of accounts from base. What we offered to the client here was, why don't you take off a cutoff date of your books of accounts and talk about going live on Zoho on a particular day. So from this date onwards, you could do your entire financial accounting auditing on Zoho, and you wouldn't have to worry about any legacy issues. So that was something that we suggested and we're working on right now. And also, what's happening is they are acquiring another company that's currently on another platform, and they want to bring that company onto the Zoho platform. So while we're doing the phase 2, we're also preparing for phase 3. So that's something in our pipeline as well. And yeah.
Yes. So that's pretty much a summary of the entire case study. And thank you for being so patient and listening to us. And we're happy to take on any questions and share any other additional information that you may like. Kishore, I think I'll hand it to you at this point.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Ash and Gautam. That was outstanding. So everyone, as a reminder, please enter any questions that you have into the chat and we can go through them. We did get a couple questions that were submitted earlier. So one of them was, so this is a cybersecurity company, and did that in itself cause any differences from how you normally would engage with a client because they're in cybersecurity? Did they have additional requirements around even just sharing information with you that might be different from what you're used to with other clients?
Fortunately, not really. I think it was fairly seamless to kind of interact with them in that space. But I think what's important to also understand was the nature of the work they did, especially because of the entities that they serviced was, is confidential, and and that had to be kept in mind. So any kind of tracking or any kind of visibility that different people have into different modules, even if it is in-house crew, right? We had to kind of really focus on the access level, access to all of it. So while you may have certain aspects which are visible to all team members, you may have very small bits of information that only certain people in the senior management have visibility to. So to that extent, yes, we would say that yes, structuring that was key. Also because their distributor network is something that they work with closely. So you want to kind of keep that information very sacrosanct as well.
Excellent. Another question we had was, and you might have covered it, but I just wanted to ask you to kind of reiterate then, time. How much time did it take from the beginning of the engagement till you were able to deliver your output to them?
I think it does take some amount of time, and the reason we don't rush it is because if we don't kind of systematically approach this, then we'd be tugging at too many ends and then not reach anywhere, right? So if we're working one piece of the puzzle at the time, then we kind of ensure that it is robust. While our process understanding and the evaluation of the system design kind of highlights all the missing pieces to us, so we know where the key concern areas are, and we probably start working on one or two elements in parallel. But until and unless that is established, then kind of moving on to the other would not be the best way possible, because you want to first to ensure that the baseline functions and then keep adding on to the pile. So this project typically took about 4.5 months, because it was quite comprehensive in that sense, because there was the products bit, and then there's the services, then there is the MIS and things like that, and then there's some complex modules that come in between and fit in, right? And that needs to be in, and all of these, once individually done, need to be effectively integrated together as well. Otherwise your MIS is going to be pretty much piecemeal and not the entire plate.
Excellent. Final question that was pre-submitted was around the expertise level of the people you deal with. Do you find that when you have an engagement that it makes a difference whether the people you're dealing with have deep experience with process consulting and process mapping, et cetera, or is it actually almost better if they don't have that experience and basically are coming to it from a more fresh perspective?
I think it's more individualistic, to be honest. It's great to have people who have experience, but who are open to feedback and who are not resistant to change. So to that extent, we're most welcome to learn from all of our clients as well. So it's not that, it's always a two-way street, and we want to ensure that we're learning from them as well. So, and also they worked more closely with the business than we have. We come with a different leverage, that we have prior experience on systems, and they come with the leverage that they've been in the same system, so they know exactly at a grassroots level what works and doesn't. So happy to kind of introduce that, but sometimes it also helps that it's a blank slate, so they're open to anything. So that's also kind of interesting, because then you kind of get to have more fun with it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a new question that just came in. So could you share a little more detail on how you were able to manage privacy during the digital interaction, specifically any accesses that you had to their systems by anyone on the Valenta team?
So thankfully, I think what essentially happens is they do give us super admin access, because otherwise without that we would not be able to make any changes, right? But our systems also facilitate audit logs and backtrails, whereby you can see that what changes have been made and things like that. But we also had an approval system whereby, unless senior management essentially signed off on a particular design in system, we wouldn't proceed with those changes. We also had sandbox versions of those changes, whereby you would design the system and it would not be live and impact any kind of existing data until and unless it was kind of approved by the senior management, right? And then you finally configure access at the third level, whereby you say, okay, within the in-house personnel, these people have access, these people don't, these people have limited visibility, whereas these people have complete. So to that extent, it's more or less layered. I hope that answers the question.
And also to add to Ash, because a lot of the modules that are created on Sandbox were created from a base that we've done. We also ensured that access controls were created by us from using the super admin access, and also our team that was employed into this engagement was restricted, so no one had access to anything they shouldn't have had. Okay. And before we uploaded or downloaded anything from the system, there was a prior approval from the client, and because that's something they can pick up from the audit trail, and we had told them how you could do that as well, so you could ensure that nothing is happening and build trust.
Terrific.
And that's the format essentially, Kishore. That's system agnostic. It's more like a philosophy that you follow.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I think we've been seeing from client engagements overall, that there is generally a confidence level in dealing with Valenta because of the way that you approach these engagements as well. So that's terrific. Those are all of the questions we have for today. So just wanted to say again, thank you so much, Ash and Gautam, for a terrific presentation. Thank you to everyone who attended. And I'd encourage everyone who attended, please let anyone that that you know that these go on a regular basis. We'll be promoting them actively through LinkedIn and other sources going forward. And please let your colleagues in your network know. And we'll look forward to our next Insider series in just a couple of weeks. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a
Thanks,
good day.
everyone. Bye.